Hi,
Hello.
Anna. Hello.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Awesome. Thank you, sir, for joining me. A little bit of a
Sure.
technical difficulty there in the beginning, but I'm so happy that we're able to connect.
Yes, same here.
So let me just introduce you, and then we can get started. So this
Sure.
is, and it's Sayer, right? Sayer.
hmm
This is Sayer G. He's founder of GreenMed Info, which is the world's largest open access natural health database, and international bestseller selling author of Regenerate, Unlocking Your Body's Radical Resilience Through the New Biology. First off, thank you, sir. Thank you for your time, your energy. I'm super grateful for having you here, and I'm sure everyone that's watching is as well.
Thanks for the invitation. I didn't realize we were going to be doing it on a Wi-Fi enabled device as we were trying to figure out a workaround.
Yeah.
So we're all taking it for a team right now, just absorbing that EMF. But we'll put up force fields, shields.
You know, it's funny. I actually have, because if you have iPad or an iPhone, they have these plugins, and see, and you can put an Ethernet. So
we have those, and I should have probably set that up as a backup. So next time I do something like this. But the other thing was we had to upgrade our software, and that's like getting the mRNA vaccine at this point. Like I've been hesitating to do it due to how much more of my freedom is going to be. But whatever, we're here now, so let's enjoy.
Well, I'm glad. I'm happy for me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
So, I just want to start, I guess, by you talking about yourself, just a little bit about your past, how you got to this point in your journey, and what was that red pill moment, I like to call it, that really shifted you towards pursuit of universal truths?
Wow. Well, thank you. I can only hope to be in alignment with universal truth, right? Can't we all?
Yeah.
Well, for me, the red pill moment was really, discovering Medline, which still is my base mission, which is to make people aware as best as I can of all the research that exists supporting natural medicine and pointing to the downsides of pharmaceutical medicine and or vaccines, but not based on my opinion, based on the research itself, which has been suppressed. So the sort of origin story of GreenMed Info and my work was total censorship, total gaslighting, total misdirection, and mainstream media vilification of those who would stand up and say, hey, guess what? The wisdom of the ancients got us here. And then now suddenly it's dangerous to use essential oils and vitamin C to take control of your health. Now we see that weaponized globally as far as the pandemic, if you will. Not to get your channel de-boosted, but...
Yeah, I know. You always got to be careful with the words.
At this point, I could care less if they take my account out because I'm waiting for that moment because it's just a moment of liberation back to creating the new platform. And when I saw your brand Decentralized, I'm like, I don't know this guy. He doesn't know me very well, but hey, we need to talk because I'm all about this concept. So, so that's my sort of origin story in a few bullet points.
Did you have anything, because I know with many people, if I could rewind even farther back, did you have any trauma or anything that happened in your life that kind of shook you out of that matrix reality?
Yeah, my birth was traumatic, and I think that's true for almost everyone, only it's so deeply repressed. And so being an infant with bronchial asthma episodes from 6 months onward, where I needed to be injected with adrenaline to save my life, so to speak, had they maybe identified cow's milk intolerance, intergenerational emotional trauma, basic modalities that are flourishing right now, I would have potentially never had been, in the medical merry-go-round. So about 10 operations later, when I was 17, I discovered cow's milk was at the root of my issue, eliminated that. But then it unwound into all the other layers because obviously we're not just physical beings, we're psycho-spiritual, emotional. And I'm 48 now, and I've just started healing. And not even stuff that's even mine per se. It's from my parents and their parents and society constantly traumatizing us, gaslighting us constantly. So, it's work we do here, and then when we pass on, we do it in the other plane. So it's like, might as well just do it now, and try to enjoy it.
I love it. Yeah, it's a journey, right? It's like taking the good and the bad and embracing it, and then moving through it, and healing yourselves through that pain. I love
Amen.
that.
Amen.
So this last year was pretty much the big. I honestly believe it was the Great Awakening. This is the beginning of that.
Careful. Sounds like
I know,
QAnon.
right? Again, I know. I
You
really,
can't say awakening anymore because it's like means you're gonna storm the Capitol or something, right?
I'm actually glad you said the 16 plus one there. When was the moment that you truly started speaking out? For me, it was the beginning of 2020, and I started pursuing this whole, all that movement and really looking deep into the data that's being presented to us. Was that the same for you, or was it before?
It was pretty far in the past for me because when I started to get into Green Med Info, it was around 2007, and my first daughter, she was being created in my wife at the time's womb, and questions like vaccination are so not academic anymore. It's like, wait, they want to pump her with how many vaccines? Like at the moment of birth? Like, what is this about? So I went and looked at the literature to see, what does the evidence say? What do the scriptures say of the Church of Scientism? And unfortunately, there was nothing that could convince me that would be anything but an insane violation of her health and anyone else's health who participates in this ritual, basically. It's not evidence-based. It's completely superstition-based. And so anyway, that started me down the path. And then over 10 years, it became clear to me that, like, for example, the EU Commission had already decided they were going to merge the vaccine passport and the actual passport back in 2019. And there was it said 2021 was when they were going to do this. So it's like, I already kind of saw the writing on the wall. They're going to try shutting us all down into this bio-apartheid, sort of like digital gulag. So, but the victims at the time are the children and the infants, the ones who you can't say vaccines cause brain damage, certainly not autism. So they were already gaslighting and vilifying and trying to take out people like myself and our brand. So I already knew this was going to happen. But now that adults are having to face this life or death decision and they can't travel, see their parents, have a livelihood if they don't, accept the mark of the beast, if you will, it's not academic anymore. And that's actually promising. Like you said, it's like we're being forced to awaken in a way that we weren't when the kids were being sacrificed. Now it's not just parents, it's actually everyone who has to consider this.
You said a thing about the passport. One of my biggest fears is they start to force that for actual travel, for going on airplanes. What's your thoughts on that? Because that's probably that'll create such disconnection and seclusion on a grand scale that is just terrifying to even think about.
Thanks, by the way, for all the great comments and people watching. It always feels good, doesn't it, when you have all these great people saying, hey, it's like, wow, okay. So what we're saying is meaningful in a way. Well, my understanding of the situation is the more people that initiate themselves into this future of a subhuman, transhuman type of existence with these messenger RNA software systems, which is how they're branded and marketed. So this isn't conspiracy. We are dealing with a bifurcation, a speciation event, where those who are aligned with natural law, natural principles, and those who are going into the technocratic, transhumanistic realm are going to just kind of be in different worlds. And the world that they own includes, like post 9/11, of course, the global takeover of the air travel system under the auspices of saving people from terrorists. Well, they transmogrified that into this is the new global war on terror. It's bioterrorism, and humans are a threat because we have a microbiome and a virome. So we're terrorists. We could be patient zero for a new global pandemic that could kill 7 billion people. This is literally the psyop they've dropped on us to put a hard stop between all the things that we once considered entitlements, and they're going to then get people to consent because they're not forcing it. I mean, yeah, in certain areas they're forcing it, but it's the consent process. So those who have decided to go ahead and get the vaccine, you've just voted for the future. And it looks like what Orwell said, you want to see a vision of the future, visualize a boot stomping on a human face forever. And then he said, if you don't want this to happen, then do something about it. But that's what's happening right now. And that was written in what, late 40s, 1984? Yeah. Oh my God. So anyway, that's dark, that's gross, it's triggering, it's dark. So let's just say that the good news is I know the vast majority of people are not doing that, and they're finding a way to resist, stand up, and just honor what they know is true, which is that you do not want to risk your life and your genetic purity by doing such a just completely sick thing. So in other words, they're waiting on a critical mass to get beyond, let's say, 51%, and then you'll have Handmaid's style. It's her fault, it's his fault, and everyone pointing and weaponizing the good nature of people, like for the common good and virtue signaling, until they're literally beating people up or just depriving them of life and liberty and the ability to make a living because they won't participate in this ritual. So every single person that does not do it is voting for a beautiful world that is going to come out of this kind of nightmarish scenario, because I see as much light as darkness, if not more light, actually, at this moment.
I love that you called it the Church of Scientism, or the rituals, and you really are putting a significance to how, there's like this shame around it if you don't believe it. And so that's very important, because that's, in my opinion, it's that manufactured consent. It's not just consent of like, hey, do you want to do this? And you say yes. No, it's like this process of indoctrinating and getting to that point where you start accepting because of fear, because of not wanting to be locked down anymore. So
absolutely. Yeah, it's a literal thing, because if you think about scientism, which is really the belief that there's only one method, one way to ascertain truth or what's actually real, and that's science, right? Even though it's actually a methodology, not a destination. There's no such thing as settled science. That's an absurd contradiction. Yeah. Well, the implication is there can only be one way to apply it, which is medical monotheism, which then you have something very much like the Spanish Inquisition. They've already attempted to indict and burn natural health practitioners at the stake. But now it's not just natural health people, it's literally anyone who does not submit to this absolutely pseudoscientific or anti-scientific agenda that they're ramming down our throats with propaganda, but is so obscenely illogical, non-commonsensical that really you almost have to say, okay, at some point, people that do consent to this, we just got to let them go and be on their path. But we're going to build a stronger, more resilient community that people share our values, and we're going to be just fine.
This whole last year, I had, like I mentioned, that in the beginning of the year, I had this urge of speaking out. And then 3-4 months into it, I started feeling this need to save people. Like, I got to tell as many people as possible. I really got to
Yes.
reach out and tell people. Yeah. And then I definitely got to a point at the end of the year where, I think I've set up expectations so high that I really got, I didn't feel like it kind of came to what I wanted it to be. So what would you recommend be the shift? Like, what can people do now, given, having the perspective of this last year and the direction that we're going in, like really just focusing on creating instead of, I guess, trying to save?
Well, I want to honor the reality here, which is you did step up and speak out, because initially early in this situation, I remember when I first really spoke up about the masks, I started reporting on the World Health Organization, CDC. Their guidelines specifically said masks are actually fomites. They're vectors of transmission of respiratory community-acquired disease. It's quite the opposite of what this absurd psyop is about now. And I had so much pushback. I have hundreds of thousands of followers and email subscribers. And when I started reporting on the science, they're like, oh, you're crazy, far-right, pro-Trump jerk. Like, go to hell. Like,
this projection. You're like, what are you talking about?
And I was like, oh my God, really? I'm referring to the CDC and the WHO's guidance. But I had to stand up, and I kept doing it. And I almost, again, probably lost my entire platform in the process. I have basically been completely deplatformed now, except for Instagram. Ironically, even though we had 2 Green Men Info pages deleted, I'm not going back. So, again, once I'm gone from this, it'll be good. But I think that's a beautiful thing, because you did have an impact. All of us did. I'm so happy. We have a campaign through my nonprofit, standforhealthfreedom.com, which started in June, a campaign that enabled you to contact your elected officials and say masks should only be voluntary. And we've had over 300,000 people, well, actually emails sent. Wow. It's less than 300,000 advocates that did those emails, probably more like 150. And it's had a huge impact. I know it. You know, like there are states that are now, you know, overturning this draconian executive order, and it's looking good. So, but to answer your deeper question, it's like, what do we do? I believe we do the best we can to take radical good self-care for ourselves, which is the most compassionate thing you can do, right? The Buddha said something to the effect, if this is true, we can attribute this to him, that there's no one that deserves more love in the world than yourself. You know what I mean? Like
Yes.
the Bodhisattva vow is that you never stop serving. That's until everyone is free. Everyone is whole and healed. But you can't do it if you're exhausted and you start becoming like the monster that you're fighting, right? Like Nietzsche said, be careful of that. So you do it to the point where you're like, oh, I'm so triggered and exhausted and pissed off that more people aren't doing what I'm doing, and your little inner child's all upset and cranky and having a tantrum. That's when you got to go back, reparent, adult back up, recharge, take care of yourself, maybe do something good for yourself, take a bath, eat some chocolate, whatever. And then you just get back on the horse again, you know? And there's more of us now than there ever have been. I'm telling you, man.
I watched a interview with Alex Zek, and he was talking about it was with Lori Ladd. I don't know if you know her as well, but they were talking about she's really into grounding work and just a lot of metaphysical work. But she talks about going back and forth, the ebb and flow of being in it, right, and allowing the ego to take over, and you're like just in it, and then stepping away and being an observer of yourself, and like, why am I reacting this way? Why is this happening? And I love that you said that about it really does start with loving ourselves and being aware of the signals that our body and creating that relationship with ourselves. Because how can we connect with each other if we're not connected to our bodies first?
Yeah, and it's like more the vibe, like not to sound all new agey, but you know, I have a newsletter that puts out very triggering information. Like they're literally these groups that are related to intelligence agencies in the UK and America that have targeted me and McCullough and others as national security threats, just because we publish peer-reviewed published science calling into question this absolutely crazy agenda, right? So, but when I put out that information without me being part of it, and I can't hold the space of like calmness and equanimity, people get even more tweaked out. And it's like from either side, they're so cognitively dissonant and diseased that ultimately, as the Green Med Info founder, am I spreading health or pain and suffering in the world? So I have to say, man, like even my own publishing model is a bit outdated, whereas live streams like this are amazing because we're holographic entities. We contain an infinite amount of energy and intelligence within ourselves. And that's how, when you show up, your body doesn't lie. People can pick up your vibe, and that's right.
That's exactly right. That's why I love doing this stuff.
Totally,
100% right. There is a connection that's happening right now. This like transfer of energy between you and I and everybody watching.
It's etheric, man. Like you and I, or I'll say you right now, give off the vibe to me of more trustworthiness than all 10 million Washington Post articles put together. And what does that say to, right? It's true. And I'm sure we have our downsides too and our dark sides, but the mainstream media is dead. It's like an extinction level event that has occurred. That's why they're locking down social media right now, because they know the power that just one viral video can have to disrupt their entire agenda, just like Bitcoin is doing to the whole financial system, right? Extinction level event. And it's totally amazing and revolutionary.
Yeah, I'm glad actually you brought that up because I had asked that question about what can we do? What can we do to create this new earth? And I've been in crypto since 2013. I've been trying to teach that and push that out, that at least that knowledge of decentralization and separating from the centralized governing system. I call it the most peaceful protest against the system. And also what I've been trying to teach is it being the gamification of abundance and really connecting the mindset of abundance. And because it starts with self. Do I deserve abundance? Do I deserve money? And crypto is like creating this practical way of obtaining that. So what are your thoughts on crypto?
Hey man, I didn't realize you're such an evangelist and preaching the gospel. No, I mean, I'm with you, man. Like when Max Kaiser, it's hard to take him seriously, but I'm taking him more and more seriously as his predictions come true. He thinks Bitcoin is a vote for world peace and that the fiat US dollar is an instrument of terror and just complete endless war. And when you really break it down and understand the power dynamics, the history, the Federal Reserve, the petrodollar, it's like, holy shit, he's right. This is literally the substrate for evil on the planet. And one or two people get to control the dilution or debasement of every single dollar holding individual or organization on the planet. Like in the past, 12 months, they printed 33% more of our money supply.
Trillions out of nowhere.
I mean,
yeah.
They just basically did an unlegislated tax / theft of every single person's purchasing power of every asset that's dollar denominated. So Bitcoin is just reflecting the revolution that's happening, which is people are waking up. Even the banksters are realizing I got to get the hell out of dollars and toxic dollar assets and get into Bitcoin, because the tidal wave that's happening, by the way, Bitcoin's stateless, which means there's no monopoly on violence, which is the only reason why the dollar has any value, is that we have the most shit to kill people and torture them with. But Bitcoin has none of that. It's decentralized, stateless, permissionless, trustless.
And I want to make a point, because a lot of people are like, well, that's the central currency, like that's the one world currency, and that they're in control. It's like nobody's in control of Bitcoin. It's decentralized. It's autonomous. There's no boundary. Everyone owns a piece of the network. So no one individual, not the few, but the many. And I think that's a concept that people need to pursue themselves. They need to research themselves to understand it, not just listen to other people that are trying to protect the old centralized system.
Absolutely. It's so cool to know you got into it at 2013. So you're someone I want to stay in touch with, because this is so exciting, for people that are newer to it. I got into it around 2017. It was Andreas Antonopoulos, who
I interviewed him back in the day. I actually met him at a conference. Yeah, I've been to like 20 different conferences in the last 5-6 years.
Well, I love this guy because he's a revolutionary. He's explaining more about, the philosophical, societal, transformative aspects of it, because now it's Wall Street 2.0 and it's really getting, shady. So I just want people to understand that, when it comes to the future, the dollar is obviously toxic. It's basically backed up by promises and trust. Bitcoin is different and fundamentally, and that I think it is going to become the world's reserve, asset versus U.S. treasuries and gold. So that's important for people to know moving forward. It has its limitations. Obviously, you need fiat to buy it or to get mining equipment to mine it. So there's a power inequity there. And then, of course, proof of stake, like Ethereum, same problems. The more coin you own, the more power you have in the system to vote. I like Cordal and other projects like it. Cardano is actually a little bit similar, but Cordal is a minting process where anyone can get a share of it based on the access of time or participation. So it's a completely different model. So, the decentralized web is coming, and I think
I love that you mentioned that, because I call Bitcoin the Band-Aid of the industry. It's like, bandage is the actual word, but Band-Aid is just the marketing that happened around that name. That's a brand name. And so Bitcoin became like the brand of the industry, but that's not the idea. The idea is blockchain. And people are creating, I think we're at the 4th or 5th evolution since Bitcoin came out now, where we're solving, you have NFTs now, non-fungible tokens that are going to facilitate like real estate transactions, smart contracts on a whole different scale. There's a new one. I don't know because you guys are talking about Cordal, and I saw that they created a decentralized chat platform.
Yes,
right?
Exactly. It's sending information through unconfirmed transactions on the blockchain that then disappear after 24 hours. And there's no way that you can intermediate, as far as I understand, beyond obviously the hardware being compromised, which is the case because all of these chips, Intel chips, AMD, have backdoors. But open source CPUs get around that. So the hardware and the software is evolving to the point where privacy will be protected, and you can exchange information of value without intermediation by a third party. And that is exactly why centralization has led to what we're seeing unfold around us, which is like some neo-feudal, neo-communist, technocratic gulag that is being rolled out right now.
Yeah, I love that. And that's, I think, what is the key to understand about crypto is that we're still in the innovative stages. we haven't passed the chasm of mainstream yet. We're still like literally creating. The point is, this is facilitating us to disconnect from that centralized system, from that centralized governing system, and really take back control and power of our finances, of our data, of our internet access, everything. And I think that's beautiful. I think it's really like a step forward. It's like a practical way of really, making your own passive income through it.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is too, is it's just treated as property by the IRS and the SEC. So as long as you don't trade like, all these crazy people just trying to do these trades like as if it's just some kind of stock, but you hold on to it, it will appreciate and eventually be the new primary collateral layer that loans and interest is generated from. So you just hold it and you get a low interest loan, or you just hold it and you get interest from, like, Gemini Exchange is behind BlockFi. That's an example. You get 6% interest. Banks right now are giving you like 0.0125%, and they're going to go to negative interest rates soon. So you can see what's happening. I mean, that's an incredible parallel universe that's emerging for wealth preservation and creation for those who are willing to just hold that primary asset, if you will.
So I kind of wanted to shift a little bit the conversation. I know you're married to Kelly Brogan, the doctor. She's amazing. Oh, there it is.
See, I even have a cup with her name on it. Yeah, I'm pretty into her for sure.
Yes, you are. This world really has gotten super disconnected. We've especially because of 2020. And I've noticed that you and Kelly have an amazing relationship, such a strong relationship. So what is, because I want to say that in this disconnection, in this process that we've gotten so disconnected, we've lost that ability to connect not only with the people around us, but like to mates, because we're so close together in these small, in these small spaces for so long, in these lockdowns. So what is something that you guys do, that you practice, that helps facilitate that?
Well, I can say I'm blessed because I found a woman, a partner, a soulmate, if you will. Twin flame is really the more accurate description. We really did go through the 7-year unfolding of, like, spiritual meat grinder is more how I describe the 7 years. It's just amazing. So, but the reality is that we are both dedicated to self-work and reparenting, which is a way of talking about just owning the fact that we have these traumatized infant child parts of ourselves that are actually divine archetypally, but that have been so abused and misinterpreted that they're running rampant, pulling the strings behind the scenes, right? Manipulation, tantrums, neediness. And, like, when you start to learn how to really embrace and start loving the parts of yourself that you don't even want to share with yourself because you're so disgusted by them, right? Because we're all meant to hate ourselves, whether we know it or not. I mean, when I was circumcised, like, day one, I mean, the stuff they do to, like, rip totally to, that shit screws with your soul and body probably for life. I mean, just to heal that one thing. So my whole life, I've done nothing but get traumatized. I chose to experience that medically and then try to heal from it. So I was destined to meet someone like Kelly, whose life's work is taking 100% responsibility, no victims allowed, able for around psychiatric disorder diagnoses or any other reason, and that for that they basically tried to crucify her, burn her at the stake. And that's unfortunately where we're at today. No one wants to hear that you're responsible for your health, because there's this deadly invisible particle called COVID-19 that's going to cause the total world to shut down and reorganize itself. This is the allopathic witchcraft that's been going on for hundreds of years. It's convinced people you have no agency. There's these invisible things, demon viral particles that only we have the ability to see, because they're like quantum scale, right? You need an electron microscope to see them. Give me a frickin' break. They're exosomes, or they're viral particles within the virome, which is essential for us to be alive and to have the organs in our body. It's all been so inverted, which is why the new biology is so important. It's really just the real biology described, in terms that we can understand now. So anyway, so Kelly is just part of the magic of my life where, and by the way, it's not easy. We hold each other accountable constantly because we trigger each other in our woundedness and then we can't escape from it because like we want to run the hell out of here if we get triggered, but we're married and we live together. So that's the container that's created. That's like a crucible, but it's also going to produce diamonds and gems and, spiritual rainbows, so that's kind of what's going on.
I love that. I think in a way I'm going to try to summarize it. So it's essentially finding someone that is willing to work on themselves, right, individually, be patient with each other through that growth, and I guess be willing to call each other out.
That's not a problem for Kelly. That's all she does by her nature. Oh my God. I'm more the guy that wants to be polite, like, and cover stuff up to be like, like, that's not Kelly, man. She's just so real and honest. And that's a beautiful thing. But man, that's like tough. That's like hard medicine when you first get it,
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about the book, Regenerate. I know you just came out with it in March, right, of last year?
Yeah, I was in the middle of when the world's
right in the beginning, right?
Yeah, literally the world's bookstores were closed. It was the most poetic moment. No, it was
I know.
It was beautiful because I didn't rely on any conventional support to promote my book. All I did was use my community, give them an opportunity to experience a masterclass I did for free on the topic. And the book broke records. I mean, it could have very well made the New York Times, but there are political reasons why it didn't. It had the volume. But,
For
I
sure.
didn't expect
It
to
was
get on
right. I mean, it came out during a time where they were trying to go in one direction. You're like, no.
Yeah.
So it was like conflicting with the narrative.
I mean, I didn't even address germ theory in the book. I wish I had. I had to do all that afterwards. And I felt so remiss because I had already discovered that exosomes provide a legitimate alternative explanation for what we believe is contagion and, viral infectivity, pathogenicity. And I worked that theory out. I call it the xenogen hypothesis, and I've done videos and written on it. And it helps people understand that it's not just viruses don't exist or they're just deadly. There is this middle realm, and it makes sense when we start to understand what viral particles are. And again, they're often indistinguishable from exosomes, which were first termed viral-like particles because they are basically the same thing. So anyway, so this book really was focused more on what I would say are the positive discoveries, including things that are so, if you will, Aquarian, that I still get a lot of joy out of just thinking about chapter 3, which is on the new biophysics of energy synthesis, where I get into technologies that would probably even help explain ET craft, like extraterrestrial travel. I mean, it's literally based on things like water cavitation. It's just
Are you talking about like resonance science?
Yeah, I mean, like kind of like Nassim Harriman and I've had.
Yeah,
some
I was just about to mention
yeah.
Nassim. Yeah.
Yeah, because actually there is overlap, and I reference him in my book. Actually, he's one of the few people I reference because he's so on, the frontier, and it does speak to things like free energy technology, not just being some theoretical thing. Every single mitochondria in our body functions like a nanoparticle accelerator or cyclotron, and is able to accelerate protons to relativistic speeds, which then transform light into matter, as well as transforms atoms into one another. There's biotransmutation going on, like alchemy. And it helps explain why people can live literally for a decade or longer without food or water. I mean, this is what's so freaking exciting. So in the middle of COVID-19, it's like we're in the dark ages, literally, the same exact thinking. And here we're just trying to bring in the next Aquarian age of where we can live sustainably, well, regeneratively. I don't want to give the UN any more credit for the co-option of that term, for millions of years without any impacts to the environment, living off of water, generating infinite free energy, as well as transforming water into the periodic chart through water cavitation. It's in the book. And that's the part that hasn't even got out there yet. But some people have read it and they're like, whoa.
Yeah, that's like such a next level of awareness to be able to even grasp that idea.
I think we can all do it because we are miracles incarnate, and people have experienced that when they felt grace, or maybe they had plant medicine experience or runner's high. and you realize that it's a miracle that we exist and that actually life is eternal, and we have an eternal, immortal thread within our body, which is actually the germ line of the cells in our body, which so it's actually very interesting how mysticism, biology, and physics are now completely converging.
It's all connected.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, you sound like a person that has done plant medicine. I have myself. I don't know if you want to share what kind of medicine you've done,
Yeah.
if you have.
I would love to, because for me, the category of plant medicine stretches from literally pretty much anything we can eat in plant form all the way up to like ayahuasca, grandmother, right?
Yes.
I've had experiences post-fasting with apples where I've literally meditated with them and hear them sing to me about their inner nature, right? Like, don't eat my beautiful flesh, but don't eat my seed. Like, let it pass through you. Like, that kind of thing. That is how the indigenous peoples lived. There was no distinction between like waking and dreaming necessarily. Like, this is all part of what happened to traumatize and bifurcate, you know, the Western psyche. You know, there's the origin of consciousness and the breakdown of the bicameral mind by his name's James, Julian James. And it's a good example of this mythopoietic default state that we used to live in, where we literally identified ourselves here in certain cultures versus, you know, the ego behind the brain or whatever the hell we think. And how, you know, for many people, plant medicine or psychiatric disorders, if you will, spiritual breakthroughs, that's how they return to this more primal mythos. The logos is subtended by the mythos. And so anyway, so plant medicine, I've experienced plant medicine. There are many forms of plant medicine. You don't need to take anything outside of yourself, but these technologies offer a type of healing of trauma that I believe, here's my explanation. We are a post-cataclysmic species, like I believe, right? 13,000, I think it was BC, was it? There was a major event, probably a meteor, and we had the flood. Civilization was pretty wiped out, and we had high civilizations going back. Some people say Lemuria, Atlantis, Mu. I mean, there's actually a lot of evidence for this. In fact,
Anunnaki. I've heard of that.
Yeah. I don't know. We literally had to scratch ourselves out from the dirt over the past 13,000 plus years to where we are now in order to start to recover ancient knowledge and technology, because there is technology through sound, which when we whisper, we have ultrasound, that can induce cavitation in water, which can produce temperatures that are the same as found on the surface of the sun. When you look at the perfectly mitered stone in these ancient megaliths, like throughout the world, that technology is so beyond what we have today. So my point really is more around, we have experienced a lot of trauma as a species, and plant medicines have been there since the beginning of time to help clear the slate and produce in us, as Paul Stamets talks about with the stoned ape hypothesis, that a real leader is both fearless and compassionate. And that's what these mushroom technologies, for example, elicit when you go through the heroic journey, like Joseph Campbell talks about. So if you're willing to go take that heroic journey, which I have in the past, I don't do this very much at this point because I'm trying to just allow things to unfold with me being in complete agency, because there's a dark side to that realm as well. But I think that they will help to heal our species. So I do give great value, and I honor those technologies. They are so beautiful, but they have to be used carefully.
Yes, I agree with that. Somebody once told me, like with weed, for example, marijuana, she's like, she'll help you up until a point, and then she'll take that away and then show you some darkness. So there's definitely is I like to call it, you know, there's like medicinal, there's recreational, and then there's ritual, right? There's the ritualistic look at practice of these plant medicines, and doing it with an intention, and not just like doing it willy-nilly or to stop a symptom or something.
Absolutely. When I was in college, I remember that exact thing happened. Is like, you know, a lot of people in my college, you know, cannabis. I went to a few Dead shows. There's a certain point where it was like a mama bear, and you're like this baby bear trying to, you know, suckle, and she's like, no, like she gets almost violent because it's time for you to individuate. And these wise plants know that. They don't want us dependent. and that will happen sometime. So yes, and I love your differentiation. That's really wise. And we didn't have that when we stumbled upon these technologies. My generation, but I think now there's more wisdom around to help guide us in their use.
So I had a question. This whole last year really showed a side of people, a very reactive side to people because of this like separation of Earths. You have the people, really embedding, because one of two things that has happened in this society this last year. Either you completely disconnected from it and became aware and be like, nope, I'm not going to be a part of that hologram, or if the fear drove you harder into it, into the matrix. So there's been conflict, tons of conflict, people wanting to go to stores and not wearing the the muzzle, and then others coming up and going like, why aren't you doing it? You're putting me in a situation.
Exactly.
So what would you recommend? What is a practice that you do that helps you through those moments, right, between having the stimuli and the reaction? There's like that little space in between where you make a choice.
Wow, that's a good question. Well, I know for me, it's breathing. I know it sounds kind of like, every day, but just when I feel my blood pressure, my emotions get, breathing is really important. It's because whenever I make decisions with a certain karmic energetic valence, the effect is going to be similar, and it can just escalate. My understanding of what really transpired in the past year was this was a very highly architected set of events that occurred where the ultimate goal was to sow division and antagonize a dialectic between us across all possible dimensions: race, sex, gender, religion, economic caste, everything. And that was the actual goal, and it still is. So when in other words, the powers that be are literally funding the health freedom movement, and they're funding the people trying to shut it down. And there's agent provocateurs involved. There's all this going on in order to decenter us and capture our anger and fear. And it's like a battery that this thing runs off of, right? So it's not to say you just sit at home and you just breathe and you just like stay out of the world, but you try to find some middle ground. And again, never lose control of your equanimity if possible, because our whole credibility is really more based on that than anything. It's when you get all angry and pissed off, you're just like the people that you're angry and pissed off at. Well, actually, the people, the trillionaire/billionaire class pulling the strings, I don't think, they're so traumatized, they don't even connect to what decent people feel or know. They're just not even here. And it doesn't mean that they're aliens. It just means they're just intergenerationally so traumatized and dehumanized that they're just vectors of pain. And to them, AI is the ultimate solution, and that's what they're going for. They want to control every single thing on this planet using technology. And to the degree that we stay in our heart and evolve this incredible technology of the heart, that is going to guide us through this, not the mind anymore. That's where they control, right? Ones and zeros, right or wrong, off on. That's where they're dominate us.
Yeah, it's somebody said the other day in an interview it was Dr. Tommy John, because I asked him, like, what's this new Earth going to look like if money isn't the currency? And he's like, energetic exchange, like how we are in our emotions, how we are in our interactions, what our intentions are. That's going to be the true currency, our skills, what we can offer to each other.
This is so beautiful. I've come to the same conclusion. As the fiat system implodes, and say you don't have any crypto, you don't have anything. What you have is your gift, which is invaluable and absolutely unique. And it is the basis for all value in the world. It's the basis upon everything that the system captures and then tries to collect and then weaponize against us. So that means when you identify your gift, which is a beautiful thing, that's all as parents we want to do for our children. And that's all we wanted from our parents to do for us. So do it. And when you identify it, it's going to just beam out. You're going to attract others with their gifts, and you're going to want to exchange the value. And and this is the basis for the new economy. And if we can use crypto as a medium of exchange, or something like Quartz from Quartal, that is going to be the new way that we decide, okay, maybe I'm a Reiki practitioner and I don't just want your chicken eggs. You know, there's only so much. So we'll have some medium of exchange we agree on. It could be an Ithaca dollar, it could be whatever. But in the meantime, the ultimate way that you gain prosperity, abundance, freedom, health, and a feeling of safety is identifying your gift, because that's from God. That's directly from God.
I love that. Yeah, you know, so I have a therapist who's also a clairvoyant, and I asked her, what's the meaning of life? Just, you know, that basic question. She said, well, find your gift and share it.
That's boom. Make a meme out of that.
It.
I love
yeah,
that. That's that. Oh my God, yeah. That's it. That's the beauty of the silver lining of this craziness out there, is that, believe it or not, that is the most simple and most beautiful thing that could heal the entire planet.
Yeah, and, you know, I appreciate this conversation. This was very, very healing for me. Just gave me so much perspective that I never had before.
Wow.
Is there something you want to leave everyone with, or maybe do you have another book that you're writing?
No, my
Plug.
God. That was a difficult process. I wouldn't do that to myself right now. Although I thought of something. But no, I'm actually involving myself very deeply in the Quartal Project just as an advocate, because I see something in it that I think can solve a good number of the problems that we face. And it's a passion project for me at this point. I'm just going ahead and donating time, resources, and connecting people to understand it and become part of it, because it literally involves us all creating the new internet. And as you do that and you run a node on the internet, you're minting the coin, which everyone gets a fair share of. So it's like potlatch, you know, it's like an abundance type of situation, like a potluck, really. And I love that, man. It's like, to me, and then I'm also a father. So that is,
congratulations.
Thank you. And you know, that's the thing, that it's for life and from past lives as well. And that will be my most important work, I imagine. So that's what I'm focusing a lot of my attention and energy on. And that's actually, that's going to heal me too. So it's, you know, it's always works that way. So otherwise, we'll see where it goes. But man, I really enjoyed this conversation too. I feel like I connected to a brother, and I didn't know I had one out there. So
I always love doing these lives, because then it's like you start to have those connections that you don't expect. You're like, oh, this guy's the best.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And everyone who's watching too, it's awesome. We had such great feedback, and yeah, it always feels good for sure.
Thank you so much, Sayer. I really appreciate your time and your energy. I'm so grateful. And everyone watching, thank you. I'll make sure to post this, because this was an amazing, powerful interview. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay.
All right. Have a good day. Bye, guys.